Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in to watch this video. My name is Debbie and I am from Spill the Tea Leaf Readings and more. Recently, a client mentioned that other people she knew would be interested in getting readings from me if they only understood what a tarot reading could offer. So, inspired by this client, I am taking the time to make videos to highlight different types of tarot readings a person can get. If there is a certain type of spread you'd like me to focus on next, please leave a comment. Otherwise, the order of these videos will be based on a whim. Not that that's a bad thing. For this video, I'm going to focus on past life tarot spreads. While I am no expert on past lives or reincarnation, I do find the topic to be fascinating. You can use tarot cards to not only find out more about who you may have been in a past life, but also to find out what may have happened in a past life that is impacting your current life. Before I start, some basics. I'm going to be using pre-made spreads, but readings work better if the questions you ask are the ones you are pondering. So when you get a reading done, work with your intuitive guide to create the questions and the spread, personalize it for you and your current situation. This is something I am always willing to do for my clients, although sometimes the pre-made ones work just fine without any tweaking at all. How the cards are read depends on the reader, the client, the situation, and the cards themselves. The cards I'll be showing you are just examples, and I'm not actually reading for a person, not even myself. It's all in service of showing you what the tarot can do for you. And of course, if you like what you see, let me know and subscribe and maybe even get a reading with me. If that is something you're interested in, you can email me at info@spillthetealeaf.com. Okay, let's get started. As usual, I'm starting with a one-card spread or a pull for you. This one allows you to use the court cards to determine who you were in one past life by way of an archetype. Archetypes are very basic and don't tell you all the complicated stuff about a person, but do give you a little bit of a picture. The major arcana cards are actually all archetypes, but we are using the court cards here because these cards traditionally all represent different types of people. The very old school way of interpreting court cards was based on how the figures in these cards looked. A queen is always female, a king is always male, for example. Depending on what card you pulled, it would also tell you something about their physical appearance, like their hair color. Whatever was on the card would dictate this. Nowadays, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who reads the cards this way. Generally speaking, the cards tell you something about maturity level, sometimes age, and personality or characteristics of a person, but appearance and gender are more up for interpretation than in days past. I did find this archetype method on Keen.com, by the way. Looking at an example of this, after pulling out your core cards, you would shuffle just 16 cards and then pick one from the deck. Whether you pick the card straight from the top of the deck or not doesn't matter. Here we have the Knight of Pentacles, who's a really stand-up individual. They are practical, rational, logical, methodical, and hardworking. Knights tend to be the teenagers of the court cards. This is someone who's not yet established, someone who is still learning, but isn't a newbie either. Usually intellects are represented by swords, but I think this knight is telling me that the archetype here is the nerdy type, someone who could be accused of being boring but has a lot of knowledge or skills because they take the time to study and learn. The picture that comes to mind for me in this instance is that of a male wearing glasses, but again, just because this is a knight doesn't automatically mean that this person was male, as would be the traditional reading of this card. Going from one card to three, we have another spread from Keen.com. Keep your court card separate for this one and also separate your major from your minor arcana. You'll have 3 piles, one for each type of card, that you'll shuffle and then pick a card from. However you choose a card from one of these piles, make sure you do the same for the others. If you decide to cut your major arcana cards to pull a card from the middle, be consistent and do that for the other 2 as well. The major arcana card will represent a life lesson from one particular past life. The minor arcana card will show the energy brought into this current life from the same past life. And finally, the court card will help you determine who you were in this past life. Who you were feels like a really vague question. There are so many ways to answer this question. If someone asked me who I am now, I could answer with just my name. I could answer with my gender. I could state what I do, which doesn't necessarily tell a person who you are, but at least in the United States is a pretty standard answer. I could also start telling you all my interests or describe my personality traits. I could even give you an answer that covers all of this and more, so keep that in mind while interpreting the cards here. For this example, I pulled the Sun, one of my personal favorite cards, the Ten of Wands, and the Knight of Pentacles. It's a total coincidence that this is the same court card we were just looking at. The Sun card is an optimistic card. I like to think about this card in terms of experiencing joy the way a child does. So the life lesson from this particular past life might be to find the joy in everything or to always look on the bright side. The Ten of Wands is all about responsibilities. Sometimes this is about the burden of responsibilities. Sometimes it's about the reason for the responsibilities. It can also be about delegation of those responsibilities. Looking at what the next card is and knowing that this is a practical and reliable person, I'm thinking these responsibilities are tied to that. So the energy being brought into this life could be about not wanting to let people down, even if it means you take everything on all on your own. So who were you in this past life? Pulling all this information together, I think this person in their past life was a caregiver, a family man or woman who did everything out of love and care and therefore found the joy in life even while carrying so much on their shoulders. This could describe someone who was a mother, stereotypically, but could also describe a businessman who worked himself to death in order to provide for his family. This is where you have to really let the cards speak to you in order to get a clear picture of this past life. Since this is just an example, I'll leave it at this, but it's important for you to see how you could continue to go deeper with this one. The next two spreads we'll look at are very similar, but I wanted to show you both. This first one is from Kelly Mays and asks, what kind of person was I or who was I in the past? What did I do and accomplish in my past life? What challenges and obstacles did I face? How did I die? What lessons did I learn from my past life? And who did my life impact? If you pulled the Eight of Wands reversed for this first question, I would say you were someone in a particular past life who had trouble getting things done. This could have been laziness or an extreme case of procrastination, but it could have been severe anxieties as well, or something else entirely that prevented you from moving forward with your life. The Five of Wands indicates conflict and competition. Perhaps you were a boxer in a past life or even a lawyer, someone who fought for a living. The challenges or obstacles you faced may have had to do with giving away your money more than taking the time to invest in anything for yourself, as the Six of Pentacles can sometimes indicate giving charity to others. How did I die is answered with the Queen of Cups reversed. Now, because this is a court card, it's possible that someone who fits the characteristics of this card played some part in your death, but it's also possible that you died of a broken heart after your child died. At least that's the vibe I get from this card. I actually hate this question. It's rather morbid, and I'd rather know how I lived and not worry about how I died, unless it somehow plays into the lesson I'm supposed to learn from my past self, I guess. Speaking of which, the Seven of Wands shows what lessons you learned from your past life. It looks like you were always on defense, always fighting, maybe standing up for what you believed in. Based on the three Wands cards in here, though, I'm guessing this past life was full of an uphill battle that never let up, and that's why you were someone who didn't do a lot. Going back to the very first question. This is why it's important to look at all the cards together and not just individually. Sometimes a card answering one question can help reveal the true meaning behind another answer. Anyways, your past life impacted the Queen of Pentacles, a figure who is grounded, balanced, motherly, abundant, and caring. Maybe the uphill battle of life was in support of this person and allowed them to have a better life than you did, while also showing them how to care for the people you love. It's all very interesting. So now let's look at this other version of the spread. This one is from tarotavenue.com and is a bit more direct in its line of questioning. The other difference is the last question. Instead of asking, who did you influence, this spread asks, how have you been influenced? I personally find this to be more meaningful, but in case you disagree, I wanted you to see both versions of the spread. I did pick out different cards for this one since it also has a different formation. So the first card is the Three of Swords, a card of heartache. In this past life, you were someone who lived a life of sorrow, perhaps someone who tragedy followed or someone who suffered from depression. What did you do is answered by the King of Wands reversed, someone who was probably frustrated by their situation in life and took it out on other people. Someone aggressive and dispassionate. That doesn't really tell us what this person did, but more how they dealt with other people, or rather, what they did to other people, which could answer this question. The challenges faced are the Page of Cups. This youth was in tune with themselves and others and was caring, so maybe this was a person who posed a challenge to you, someone who was a natural and you found yourself constantly up against and losing to. How did you die? Again, not a big fan of this question, so I'm going to be silly here and say the Ace of Cups indicates that you drowned and just move on. I'm suddenly noticing just how many court cards there are in this reading. 4 out of 6. Wow. Okay, so the lesson learned was the Page of Pentacles. This card is one of manifestation, or at least as someone who knows when they see a good opportunity and grabs it. That's a great lesson to learn, knowing how to recognize something you want, going for it, and finding it. So how have you been influenced by this past life? The King of Swords reverse shows that maybe you understand how to manipulate people to get what you want, sort of a cross between what this past life did as the King of Wands reverse and the lesson taught by the Page of Pentacles. In a normal reading, I would definitely dig more into the fact that all the court cards are either pages or kings and that the 2 minor arcana cards are low numbers, something I won't delve into here. I'm curious which of these 2 similar spreads you like better. Moving on, here we add a card for a total of 7. The Confronting Past Lives and Mending the Soul spread comes from Emerald Lotus. The first card in the spread is one that represents you in a relevant past life, the idea being that you're seeking out a past life with purpose. In order to heal yourself, sometimes you have to look to past trauma, so this spread is trying to help you find a particular past life that will help you deal with what's on your mind or a problem that you are currently facing. As you shuffle and deal the cards for this one, it would be helpful to think about what you want to accomplish with this spread or why you're seeking out knowledge from a past life. Okay, so the second card is showing you something unresolved from this particular past life, and in card 3 tries to show you how this past life is affecting you currently. Card 4 looks at why you need to complete this unresolved issue, and then the 5th card seeks to help you figure out how to complete said unresolved issue. Card 6 is an important lesson from the past that you need to understand fully in order to move on, and the final card shows you an energy or characteristic from this particular past life that you should channel. Make sure you pay attention to how you lay these cards out. Card 2 goes to the left of card 1, and card 3 goes to card 1's right. From there, the order is straightforward. So the card that represents you in a past life is one of working alone and not being part of a team. That's the 3 of Pentacles reversed. Something unresolved in that past life is the 10 of Pentacles, a card of happiness, family, wealth, security, and legacy. I think this card is actually something that you always wanted and never achieved, especially when you consider that you are represented by a card of loneliness. Today, you are being affected by this card by being sketchy. The 7 of Swords is one of betrayal and stealth. Sometimes the figure stealing in the card can be doing what must be done to survive, but that's a little rarer. So maybe you feel in this life like you have to take what you can when you can in order to get closer to having all that you think you need. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're a thief in this life, but it does mean that you sometimes hurt people in an attempt to gain security for yourself. You need to complete this unresolved issue because you're always skulking around in the dark. You need to find a way to step out of the darkness and into the light of day without feeling like you didn't take advantage of a situation. The moon can also represent danger, but since it's not reversed, I won't interpret it that way here. The 9 of Pentacles is next. This card is sort of like that reap what you sow card. When reversed, it shows that you haven't been putting much planning or effort into planting seeds and growing. So I think this is saying that in order to complete this unresolved issue and change, you need to start taking steps towards actually planting those seeds for a better future. Maybe open up an IRA or something. The important lesson you must understand fully is the Lover's card. I could go 2 ways on this one. 1, you need to show yourself more love and more grace and allow yourself to change. 2, you need to open yourself up to love as that is clearly one piece of the 10 of Pentacles puzzle. In order to have family and legacy in many cases, you first need love, or at least a partner you want to spend your life with. I think I would interpret this more on the self-love side, but as always, there are so many ways to interpret each and every card. And finally, the 4 of Pentacles reversed is an energy or characteristic you should channel. This guy loves control and is greedy. Greed isn't usually a positive quality, so I'm going to latch on to control here. You should master control of yourself so that you gain some discipline and can start planting and watering those seeds, but also so you can stop yourself whenever you catch yourself falling back on those 7 of Pentacles tendencies and mindset. That is a behavior that needs to be controlled so you can change it. It's worth noting that 4 of these cards are Pentacles and 2 are Major Arcana. These next past life spreads are both from Llewellyn.com and go together. The first one here gives you information about a past life, and then from there you can go to the second one to advance what you learned from the first. This first one looks at gender, family, identity or personality, a critical situation that was faced during your past life, that's using cards 4 and 5 together, your past self's response to this crisis, what life lesson was learned, and what the impact of this past life has on your present day self. So here we have an example. For card 1, we have the 5 of Cups reversed. How do we figure out the gender of your past life from this card? There are 2 ways. 1, whatever gender you see on the card is the gender you go with. Or 2, you go with your gut feeling as you examine the card. It doesn't necessarily help to interpret the meaning of the card, but you can certainly do that if it helps you get that gut feeling. I also understand that gender is a tricky thing to figure out, as your past self could have been trans or stuck in the wrong body but unable to transition in any way due to circumstances in life. For this example, I'm just going to go with the gender on the card, which I believe is male. Your family is represented by the Hangman, a card that represents a pause or a time for reflection that could lead to seeing something differently. So I'm thinking that your family in this past life was a little weird or removed from society somehow, not necessarily in a bad way. They just had their own way of doing things. Maybe they were ahead of their time, kind of like Belle and her dad in Disney's Beauty and the Beast. The third card here is the Nine of Swords reversed, which is representing your identity or personality. This card is about nightmares, grief, anxieties, and stress. When reversed, I like to think that a person is starting to get past those things or is suffering from insomnia. I know, two totally different concepts here. The vibe I'm getting from this card is that of a doomsday sayer type person. You know, someone who always is going on about the worst thing that could happen and to be careful because the end could be nigh. Maybe in a religious sense, but maybe in terms of seeing what we're doing to our planet or just how humanity treats each other more generally. The critical situation faced had something to do with death and the King of Cups. The King of Cups is an emotionally mature, tolerant individual with a knack for making people feel safe and heard. He can also be quite creative. Death can sometimes mean death, but it usually has something to do with endings. Perhaps your past life had a relationship of some sort with this king, who, of course, could be a man or a woman, and had trouble accepting when it ended, like a bad breakup or even staying in a relationship longer than one should. Or, yes, this person could have died, and that could have caused a personal crisis for you in your past life. The more I'm looking at these two cards, I wonder if the king was a mentor or a teacher in your past life, had trouble leaving the nest and flying on his own, so to speak. When taking in the next card, that might make sense because the Three of Wands is all about expansion and moving beyond your comfort zone. So your past life could have responded to this crisis by eventually finding a way to move on to the next chapter in his life by starting something new and totally different. The life lesson is represented by the Three of Cups reversed, a card of loneliness. Man, I think this is saying that it's important to go it alone sometimes. As painful as it can be to not have friends around you, you do need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. That goes along with what we were just saying about the Three of Wands too. The impact on your present life is interesting. It's the King of Pentacles, someone grounded, fiscally responsible, and just a generally good guy or gal. Maybe your past self achieved what he set out to do and as a result was able to mellow out and appreciate life and enjoy it, and that spirit has been passed on to you. So with all that information, you can now use this spread to figure out how to honor the past, put the wisdom you just learned about your past self to work, and how to look ahead now. If you drew the Star, a card of hope and balance, you can honor the past by remembering to take everything in stride. That jives with the King of Pentacles we had at the end of the last one. The Page of Wands is telling you to put the wisdom from that past life to work by looking for adventure and following your passions. And the Page of Swords is reminding you to continue learning as you move forward in your life. It's interesting that 2 kings popped up in part 1 and now there are 2 pages in part 2. It seems as if your past life achieved king-like maturity and finished his journey while you were still growing and figuring it out. These last couple of slides help you create your own spread. Here are a list of questions you can ask your cards. You can put them with any other questions in any order you like, or just pick one, meditate on it, and go back to it another day with another question. I pulled the Six of Swords reversed, and I thought I would just pick one of these questions and then build on it with the other cards I pulled. Again, this is all totally random and unplanned. I think, I want to know what my purpose was in a certain lifetime. Here we have a ferryman helping to get people across rough waters. Reverse, this card can mean that someone is having trouble transitioning, but maybe it means that someone is carrying baggage. Either way, I love the idea of someone whose purpose was to help others get to safety, so I'm going to go with the imagery on the card over the meaning. I pulled the Strength card next, again reversed, which can mean inner strength. Let's say the next question I asked was what I wish I would have done differently. So maybe my answer here would be that I wish I had taken more time and been more patient and really relied upon my inner strength. Just because I was helping other people doesn't mean that I was always nice about it, I guess. And if I ask the cards one more question, let's say, what lessons did I learn? I can look at the Five of Pentacles reversed and think that maybe I learned to reach out to others for help when I needed it. Maybe that's how I ended up helping others because I myself was helped and wanted to pay it forward. There are always so many ways to read these cards, and how I chose to read these 3 was all based on the questions I chose, which I decided on after I pulled the cards. So this wasn't a real reading at all, but it is interesting. If the last question I chose was the death question, which you know I'm not a fan of, I might have said that the Five of Pentacles reversed shows me that I died of frostbite. So the meanings really can change depending on the situation and the question. And just to add in another twist, since all decks are different, if I'm going off of imagery, pulling these same cards in a very different deck might yield some very different answers here as well. Well, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed learning about these spreads and how to interpret cards to discover information about past lives. If you are interested in getting a reading done similar to what I showed you today, please feel free to email me at info@spillthetealeaf.com to book a reading with me. In my next video, I'll highlight a different type of spread, and I do hope you join me for that. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and comment below if you want me to cover something specific sooner rather than later. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a wonderful day.